You were told they were protecting you. For decades, doctors refused to prescribe pain pills to black patients the same way they handed them out in white neighborhoods. They said it was for your own good, that black bodies felt less pain, that black people were more likely to get hooked, that black communities needed to be shielded from addiction. Then the pills flooded in anyway, not as medicine, as poison. And when black families started dying, suddenly it wasn't a health crisis anymore. It was a crime problem. This is the story of how corporate greed killed thousands, paid billion-dollar fines, and walked away free, while black mothers buried their children. This is about who gets protected and who gets punished when America's pill machine breaks down. Let's go back to 1996. A small pharmaceutical company called Pharma launches a new painkiller, Oxyconton. They market it as a miracle, a pill so safe, so controlled, so perfectly designed that addiction is nearly impossible. They tell doctors it's less than 1% addictive. They send sales reps into clinics with bonuses tied to how many prescriptions they can push. They throw conferences. They wine and dine physicians. They create pamphlets that downplay the risks and exaggerate the benefits. And it works. By the early 2000s, Oxycontin is everywhere. Prescriptions explode across rural white communities first. Appalachia, Rust Belt towns, small suburbs where factory jobs disappeared and people were hurting in more ways than one. Doctors write scripts like candy. People trust them. And then the addiction starts. Not slowly, fast. Families collapse. Overdoses spike. But here's the key detail. When those white communities started dying, the government called it an epidemic, a public health emergency. They demanded treatment, rehab funding, compassion. News outlets ran heartbreaking stories about good kids from good families who got hooked after a sports injury. The message was clear. These were victims. They deserved help. But while this so-called epidemic is spreading, something else is happening in black neighborhoods. For years, black patients had been systematically undertreated for pain. Studies show that black people visiting emergency rooms with the same injuries as white patients were far less likely to receive pain medication. Doctors believed, and some still do, that black people have thicker skin, that they exaggerate pain, that they are. This wasn't just a few bad doctors. This was a pattern backed up by medical training and research papers that treated black bodies as fundamentally different. So when Oxycontin first hit the market, it didn't flood black communities the same way. Not because anyone was protecting black people, but because the same racism that denied them proper care also kept those prescriptions out of their hands. For a moment, that racist medical neglect accidentally acted like a barrier, but it wouldn't last. And here's where it gets darker. As white communities got sicker, Pharma faced pressure. Investigations started, lawsuits piled up. The company had lied about addiction rates. They knew Oxycontin was devastatingly addictive, and they hid it. In 2007, Purdue and 3 executives pled guilty to federal charges of misbranding. They paid over $600 million in fines. You'd think that would shut them down. It didn't. The Sackler family, the billionaires who owned Purdue, kept their fortune. The company kept operating. And as scrutiny increased and prescription monitoring tightened in some areas, the pills started showing up somewhere else. The street market exploded. People already hooked on prescription pills couldn't get refills from doctors anymore, so they turned to illegal sources. Pills got crushed and snorted. Pills got sold in parking lots. And as enforcement cracked down on pill mills in white rural areas, the illegal market pushed into cities, into black neighborhoods that had been economically gutted for decades. Places where opportunity was stolen, where schools were underfunded, where systemic inequality had already made people vulnerable. The pills arrived not as medicine, but as contraband. And they brought a different kind of destruction. By the way, this is exactly why we've made this channel. If you want more hidden stories like this, subscribe to Black Stories Untold. Now, back to the video. Here's what happened next. As overdose deaths climbed in black communities during the 2010s, the response was not compassion. It was criminalization. When white teenagers died, politicians called for treatment centers. When black teenagers died, politicians called for tougher sentences. The same substances, the same addiction. 2 completely different responses. Police.
Flooded black neighborhoods. Arrests spiked. Mothers were separated from children.
Young men got locked up for possession while the executives who caused the crisis played golf. And this wasn't an accident. This was the playbook. America has always treated addiction in white communities as a medical problem and addiction in black communities as a moral failure. It happened with powder versus in the 80s. It happened with alcohol during Prohibition. And it happened again with prescription pills. The system protects whiteness even in its suffering. Blackness gets no such mercy. Meanwhile, the Sacklers were still rich. Let's talk about them for a second. The Sackler family built their fortune on Oxyconton. They were celebrated as philanthropists. Their name was on museum wings, art galleries, university buildings. They donated millions to prestigious institutions while their company's product destroyed lives. Internal documents later revealed that family members pushed employees to sell more pills even as overdose deaths climbed. One email from a Sackler urged staff to turbocharge sales. Another dismissed concerns about addiction. They knew, and they kept going. In 2020, Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy as part of a settlement deal. Thousands of lawsuits had been filed by states, cities, and families. The Sacklers agreed to pay around $4.5 billion over 9 years. Sounds like a lot. Until you realize the family had already pulled out more than $10 billion from the company. They got to keep most of their wealth. And here's the kicker. Part of the bankruptcy deal gave the Sacklers immunity from future civil lawsuits. They bought their way out of accountability. Not one member of the Sackler family went to prison. Not one executive served serious time. They paid fines like parking tickets and walked away. Compare that to what happened in black communities. A man caught with a handful of pills could get years in prison. A mother struggling with addiction could lose her children. A teenager selling pills to survive could be tried as an adult. The system threw the book at individuals while letting corporations pay their way to freedom. And this wasn't just Purdue. Other companies did the same thing. Johnson & Johnson, Teva Pharmaceuticals, Endo. They all pushed addictive painkillers. They all faced lawsuits. They all paid settlements, and they all kept operating. No executives in handcuffs, no billionaires behind bars, just press releases and legal fees. Meanwhile, black families were left to bury their dead and navigate a system that offered punishment instead of help. Now here's the part that should make your blood boil. The government knew this was happening. The FDA approved Oxycontin based on flawed studies. The DEA had reports of suspicious pill shipments but didn't act fast enough. Entire towns received millions of pills for populations of just a few thousand people. Pharmacies in West Virginia shipped enough pills to give every resident over 100 each. Regulators saw the red flags and moved slow because the priority wasn't protecting people, it was protecting profit. And when black communities finally got hit hard, the focus shifted to enforcement, not prevention. Police budgets grew, treatment budgets didn't. It was the same pattern that played out during the so-called war on substances in the 80s and 90s. Criminalize blackness, medicalize whiteness, protect wealth, punish poverty. And this connects to something bigger. This story isn't just about pills. It's about who gets mercy in America and who doesn't. It's about a system that bends over backward to excuse corporate crime while crushing individuals. Purdue Pharma lied to doctors, manipulated data, and fueled an addiction crisis that killed hundreds of thousands. The Sacklers made billions, and they got immunity. A black man caught with the same pills Purdue manufactured could spend a decade in prison. He'd lose his right to vote, his access to housing, his chance at employment. The system gave the Sacklers museums and mansions. It gave black men cages. That's not justice. That's proof that the system was never designed to protect everyone equally. It protects power. It punishes the powerless. And it always has. Here's the bigger picture. The overdose crisis that started in white rural areas and eventually devastated black communities wasn't a natural disaster. It was manufactured. Every step was a choice. Purdue chose profit over safety. Doctors chose convenience over scrutiny. Regulators chose industry relationships over public health. And when the consequences hit black neighborhoods, politicians chose punishment over treatment. This wasn't a series of accidents. It was a system working exactly as designed. Corporations get to gamble with lives because they can afford the fines. Black families get no such option. They pay with their lives, their freedom, and their futures. And the gap between those two realities is where the truth lives. The same country that called white addiction an epidemic called black addiction a crime wave. The same government that funded rural treatment centers flooded urban streets with cops. The same media that humanized white victims demonized black ones. Every choice revealed who mattered and who didn't. This explains why you've probably heard about the opioid crisis, but maybe didn't hear how it hit black communities differently. The story was framed as a white rural tragedy, and it was that. But it was also an urban crisis, a black crisis, a poor people's crisis. And the fact that those stories didn't get the same spotlight, the same funding, or the same compassion shows how power shapes not just policy, but narrative. Who gets to be the face of suffering matters, because the face determines the response. When suffering has a white face, America opens treatment centers. When it has a black face, America opens prisons. That's the system, that's the pattern, and that's what this story exposes. The toll is still growing. Overdose deaths are still climbing. Fake pills, powder, even pressed into shapes that look like candy. It's killing people faster than any substance crisis in American history. And black communities, already dealing with decades of disinvestment and systemic inequality, are facing another wave of destruction. Families are losing sons and daughters. Mothers are losing children. Communities are losing entire generations. And the people who started this, the executives and owners who lied and profited, are living in mansions. They're not in courtrooms. They're not in jail cells. They're on yachts. The Sacklers gave up some of their billions, but kept their freedom. Pharma dissolved, but its poison is still in the streets. And the system that enabled all of this is still standing. So what does this mean for us moving forward? It means we have to stop pretending that justice is blind. It's not. It sees color, it sees class, it sees power, and it protects those who have it while crushing those who don't. The opioid crisis proves that America will let corporations kill thousands as long as they can pay the fine. It proves that black pain doesn't get the same response as white pain. It proves that the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended. For some people, not for us. And until we recognize that, until we demand accountability, not just for individuals, but for institutions, until we force the system to value black lives the same way it values white wealth, nothing will change. The next crisis will come. The same pattern will repeat, and the same people will pay the price while the powerful walk free. This was a crisis built on lies, fueled by greed, and enabled by a system that chose profit over people every single time. And when it finally reached black communities, that same system chose punishment over mercy. The pills that were handed out like candy in some neighborhoods became evidence for prison sentences in others. The executives who caused it bought immunity. The individuals who suffered got cages. That's the truth they don't want you to see. That's the story they don't want told. But we're telling it anyway, because you deserve to know who really profits when America's most vulnerable communities are left to burn. This was Black Stories Untold. And as always, thanks for watching. If you want more stories like this, click the video on your screen now.